Hello, welcome to Limbo. Oracles of Greek myth, prophets, psychics, seers, etc. In myth and legend, there are countless people who are granted the gift of being able to see into the future. And occasionally, and I mean very rarely, in modern day, there are still people who are unknowingly granted the gift of prophecy. That one guy who knew Too Mad would die. The person who knew King Charles would get cancer. Official productions who somehow might have nailed King Charles's death on the head. And White Fawn on Wattpad in the fanfic Bloodletting. Wilbur Soot, ex-reader. I should probably preface this with explaining the drama with Wilbur Soot before getting into it, but I really can't be bothered to make a whole-ass Turkey Tom video on it. So basically, he domestically abused his girlfriend, mostly by non-consensually biting her, and apparently abused other people too. Anyways, what layers of hell does this belong in? Yep, that's right, no sixth circle this time because there's a few degrees of separation for the actual people represented by the name. There's the real William Gold, then there's the internet persona Wilbur Soot, and then there's the Dream SMP Wilbur character, and then there's the fanfiction version that I'm going to be talking about today. On a serious note, I'm going to be making jokes that are against Wilbur, but to be clear, everything I say is alleged, unserious, and for content purposes only. That being said, Brewski is a domestic abuser, and I don't have much sympathy for that, so allegedly, everything I say is a direct attack against his personal character. What a shame as well, I did enjoy his music. This story is set in the Dream SMP, also known as some sort of SCP that causes people to play it to become groomers. Except Technoblade, God rest his soul. I'm not going to be spending this entire fucking video explaining Dream SMP lore, even though I probably could. So this story, quite simply, is after Wilbur's revival. Basically, Wilbur went insane, orchestrated the bombing of L'Manberg, and once it was over, he was killed by Filza, who I think was his dad, and he came back as a ghost with no memories of life. Ghostbur. Ghostbur went to the prison to talk to Dream, who is a war criminal slash god. I never really understood his character. And there, Dream killed Ghostbur and revived him using the revival book as the actual Wilbur, who, because Dream revived him, believed that he was a hero. And this is where the fic diverges from canon. And that's all the background you need. On with the story. The story starts with a nice little trigger warning chapter and Wattpad commenters once again having no shame for some reason, just admitting straight up to having manipulation kinks on main with no hesitation. I love manipulative men with a Wilbur Soot PFP. Oh my god, spare me the irony. And what's this? Vying for a little attention? So cute. Honestly, I'm with Random Girl 1257 on this one. What the fuck is wrong with you people? After that, we meet our main character. Us. Me and you, babe. That's right. No, let's just call them Jess. The one thing that I have to give this story props for is the fact that the author managed to keep the reader character gender neutral. Now, the character is feminine coded, something that is hinted at in the dialogue, but overall I was kind of able to stay locked in, which is a nice change. To the story now. Jess was sleeping in their home when there was a knock at the door at precisely 12:23 a.m. Why is it that precise? Who knows? Anyway, immediately Jess opens the door with no hesitation. Already, just a stupid ass choice. I know that if I got a knock on the door at midnight, given that I hadn't ordered something previously, I'd either pretend I didn't hear it or grab a gun. Regardless, Jess opens the door with nothing to protect themselves, and it's Wilbur. Yippee! He's wearing the yellow sweatshirt that Ghostbur wore and looks like a ghost. Which begs the question, why didn't Jess just assume it was Ghostbur then? Maybe I'm already caught up on details, so whatever. Also, he has big ol' canine teeth now, so if it wasn't obvious already, Wilbur's a vampire. Also, we're told that Jess used to be in a relationship with the original Wilbur, so I guess not much has actually changed for them. This was a joke about him biting them. Wilbur asks to be invited in, and Jess doesn't actually invite him in, instead pulling him inside to get him away from a skeleton outside. Okay, so heads up, I'm going to ramble once again, but this is actually really fucking good writing if I'm not reading into it too much. The entire story is actually really well written for no good reason, but this part in particular is actually like, damn. So, if you don't know vampire lore, a vampire cannot enter a home without invitation, and if they don't get an invitation, then there is an invisible force that keeps them outside. See, that's the trick though. A vampire cannot enter a home, but they can enter a house plenty fine. The difference comes in that love makes a house a home, just like those cringy Midwestern mom posters foretold. This will make more sense later, but since Jess has no love, they have no home. This means that Wilbur never needed an invitation to enter that house. Now, once again, I don't know if the author intended this, but I saw this connection and thought it was pretty beautiful, intentional or not. So, Jess is now pretty out of it, probably because there is a dead person in their house. So when Wilbur says that he just needs to drink their blood, manipulation, they, unable to say no to someone they once loved, crane their necks so it's easier to get to. Okay, but like, if he actually gave a shit about Jess, you'd think he would drink somebody else's blood and keep them safe. But unfortunately, this is somebody's kink, so that doesn't happen, and he drinks way too much of Jess's blood, nearly killing them right there. I'm gonna be a biology nerd for a second, so give me a sec. Given the symptoms that follow the drink, it sounds like class 3 blood loss followed by hemorrhagic shock, which basically means that he drank 30 to 40% of their total blood volume, or about 2 liters, and actually almost killed them. The next day, they still, obviously, feel like shit because it takes between 24 to 48 hours to regain 2,000 milliliters of blood, so they still had the symptoms of class 2 blood loss at this point, which obviously doesn't feel very good. They didn't even remember that Wilbur had been revived, so when they saw him sleeping out in the couch in the living room, they reacted much more like a normal person would. So Wilbur has to re-explain how he got there and his new quirk, and Jess reasonably feels used and kicks him out of the house. Immediately after leaving, Wilbur helps Dream escape prison. Jess, as soon as they hear the announcement that Dream is free, becomes suddenly extremely weak and passes out. And then, when they wake up, guess who's in their house? That's right, Dream. Dream immediately takes to harassing Jess like it's second nature, which it is, I'll explain later, until Wilbur shows up. Wilbur tells Jess that he has to go with Dream far away because he was now a wanted criminal and Jess had to come with him. Manipulation once again. So they hastily mount their horses and leave into the forest. As they ride, Jess sleeps, plagued by dreams of being used as no more than a blood depository for the bitey Wilbur. When they wake up, they learn that they had been taken inside an abandoned woodland mansion as they slept. The first person Jess sees as they wander the mansion is Dream, who immediately takes to harassing them once again. Unfortunately, Jess's luck doesn't pick up as they find Wilbur because he is hankering for blood again, and Jess just can't say no. But to be fair, Wilbur doesn't immediately dive in like he did the first time, asking a couple of times if it was actually okay for him to drink their blood. Now, I don't think that Jess could have said no even if they wanted to, for reasons that we'll get into, but it's nice that he asked. The next day, Jess talked with Wilbur to try to convince him to leave Dream and just go back to living life. But Wilbur says no because he's essentially enslaved to Dream because Dream could just kill him on a whim. Also, Wilbur claims that Jess's friends would never accept him because of what he did, just like his entire fan base, so we might as well not even try. It doesn't help that Dream's whole plan is to kill those exact friends as well, so there's that too. After this conversation though, Wilbur has an epiphany and realizes that he's a scummy, good-for-nothing leech and goes to confront Dream. But too late, because Jess already had the exact same idea. Jess's confrontation with Dream went just about as well as you would expect. He pretty much insulted them, threatened to kill them, verbally sexually harassed them, and then, right as Wilbur made it to the room, punched them in the face. But maybe Jess's persuasion is actually decent because Wilbur then took them and left to go home. Once back, we meet Sam, the warden of the prison, Jess's friend, and a much better person than Wilbur. He takes Jess back home in by far the sweetest character interaction of this whole fic, and then chews the hell out of Wilbur. Sam says that he would've, and probably should've, killed Wilbur the moment he saw him. But Jess means too much to him, so he chose to keep Wilbur alive for them. We also learn that while Wilbur was dead, Dream had been wreaking havoc, fucking people up, including Jess, apparently. This is not elaborated on, for now. The next morning, Wilby is hungry. But in a surprising twist and character growth, Jess says, "No juice for you," and Wilbur's biting problem has been ended. Like, for the entire story. Him actually biting somebody is not brought up again. At all. But shortly after this, Jess gets a cut, and Wilbur is just barely able to control himself over the sight of blood. Here, Jess, somehow for the first time, realizes that they might not be good for each other. Huh, who knew? After this fiasco, Wilbur turned himself into Sam, and they just fucked off to the prison to prepare for the imminent attack from Dream. The next morning, and yes, I am speed running a story right at the end, but please cut me some slack. I wrote the beginning of the script a whole month before this point. But guess who's back? That's right, Dream. And he's come to manipulate Jess again. That's right, again. Turns out, while Wilbur was dead, Jess had been visited by Dream quite a lot for something that I can only call the opposite of a therapy session, because he was giving them trauma. Dream tells Jess to actually go to the prison to help the people trying to stop him, because that's how confident he is in his plan. So they do, but like me at a party, after some formalities, they immediately leave again to go back home. There, of course, Dream is waiting, because of course he is, he was literally there. But it seems that after all this time of manipulating Jess, Dream managed to Stockholm Syndrome himself too, and actually seems to care somewhat about Jess. The devil wants to make a little deal.
First in the tank is a unique way to remember your past loved ones.
Sharks, I come to you today with an offer. Jess could go with Dream and live an awful life being manipulated 24/7 with no outside interaction. But their friends would live. Or they could die with all their friends. What a businessman. The author gives up the choice of what happens in the very last chapter to the commenters, and being the sappy little shits they are, they go with the good ending. Jess says yes. They agreed to go with Dream. Jess made a choice to give up their own life and unimaginable amounts of suffering to save their friends. But before they could leave, a vampire appeared in the doorway. And he was followed by everyone else. Dream, realizing that he had been backed into a corner, put his knife to Jess's throat to get leverage. But Jess still had 2 lives left, and they pushed themselves into the blade intentionally, killing themselves, giving Dream nowhere else to go. Dream was taken to prison after this, and Jess woke up in bed, and everything was good again. And that's all, folks. The author promised to write the bad ending too, but given that it's been 3 years since this was last updated, I'm going to have to go out on a limb here and say that's probably not happening. Overall, I gotta say, the story was actually good. The dynamics between characters were very mature, well thought out, and realistic for what it's worth. Jess's story arc, going from someone who was so deeply scarred with abuse that they were unable to retaliate or say no, to somebody who pushed themselves into the blade of their abuser, proving that they can have free will, is honestly just so good. And not at all something that you would expect from a fucking Dream SMP fanfic. The writing of the story was also shockingly good, with no noticeable typos, poor sentence structure, grammar, or paragraph structures being off. It was honestly on the level of what you'd expect from a mass-produced young adult romance novel, which sounds bad, but really isn't, because this is a fan fiction which is typically expected to be on the level of, well, a fan fiction. So, overall, content, 8 out of 10. It was definitely biased towards a weird biting / manipulation kink, but it was ignorable because the characters were so good. Characters, 8 out of 10. Honestly, better than some published books. But I have to leave out points for, once again, the kink stuff. And also because it is Dream SMP, so the characters weren't, original per se. Readability, 7 out of 10, points off because, once again, this is a Dream SMP fanfic, be for real. So total, 23 out of 30, damn good. I think that's probably the best score I've ever given one of these fanfics. In fact, I almost guarantee it. But yeah, that's all I've got. Crazy how people can predict the future, huh? Crazy. I was crazy once. They locked me in a room. A rubber room with